You have 2 weeks of vacation. A 13th century turnip farmer had more. Not metaphorically more. Literally, calendarically, provably more. And the reason why tells you something deeply uncomfortable about the world you live in now. We've been sold a story that history is a straight line from miserable peasant to comfortable modern worker. More progress, more leisure, better life. Except the data doesn't cooperate. Medieval English peasants in the 1200s worked somewhere between 150 and 180 days per year. You, a person with a smartphone and indoor plumbing, probably work closer to 240. Someone needs to explain that. So let's start in 13th century England. A village called, let's say, Elton, because Elton actually exists in the historical record, studied by historian George Homans in the 1940s. The peasants there weren't working sunup to sundown, 7 days a week, barely surviving. They had Sundays off. All of them. Canon law mandated it. Then they had the feast days, saints' days, holy days, the liturgical calendar, basically functioning as a medieval HR department. St. Swithin's Day, the Assumption of Mary, the Feast of St. Michael. Stack them up, and you're looking at roughly 40 to 60 additional days off per year, on top of Sundays. That's somewhere between 90 and 115 days annually where you were not supposed to be in the field. The church didn't suggest this. It enforced it. Working on a feast day was a sin. Actual, confessable, soul-imperilling. The threat of hell was better job security than any union contract. Now, jump to France, specifically the wine regions in the 14th century. Historian Emmanuel Leroy Ladry documented village life in Montaillou, and what he found was striking. Peasants spent enormous chunks of the year in what he called enforced idleness. Not because they were lazy, but because the agricultural calendar simply didn't need them. Winter arrived. The ground froze. You sat by the fire, told stories, made things, slept 10 hours a night. The concept of filling your off-season with a second job, a side hustle, a passion project that didn't exist yet. Rest was not a reward for productivity. It was just Tuesday. Then there's the specific case of harvest time, which everyone assumes was brutal, and it was for about 3 weeks. Backbreaking, dawn to dusk, the whole village mobilized. But here's the detail that gets left out. It was also a party. Lords were legally obligated in many English manors to feed their workers during harvest. Ale was provided, often a lot of ale. The Ramsey Abbey records from the 1200s show grain allocations for harvest feasts that were, by any reasonable measure, excessive. The peasants worked hard. Then they ate their lord's food and drank his ale. The power dynamic was still awful, obviously, but the calories were free and the ale was real. Compare that to the textile mills of Manchester in 1830. Workers, including children, frequently clocking 14-hour days, 6 days a week, in buildings specifically designed to keep sunlight out because sunlight let workers see the clock. Mill owners actually frosted the windows. The feast days were gone. The saints were irrelevant. The only thing regulating your time now was the factory bell, and the factory bell answered to capital, not to God. Historian E.P. Thompson called this the shift from task-oriented time to clock time. And once you understand that distinction, you cannot unsee it in your own life. If you're the kind of person who finds out their medieval ancestors had better work-life balance and immediately wants to tell someone about it, subscribe because this channel exists for you. Like the video, so the algorithm shows it to someone else who deserves to be annoyed by this information. And drop a comment. What's the most uncomfortable historical comparison you've ever stumbled across? I'll read them. Now, here's the part that makes the mill owners look even worse. The reduction in leisure wasn't a side effect of industrialization. It was a goal. Economists at the time, actual published economists, argued that poor people needed to be kept poor enough that they couldn't afford to take days off. A 1770 pamphlet called An Essay on Trade and Commerce explicitly stated that English workers needed to be disciplined in a labor by the threat of hunger. The feast days weren't abolished by accident. They were abolished by design. So the next time someone tells you that hard work is a timeless virtue, remember, the idea that you should work more than a medieval peasant was invented on purpose by people who profited from it. Progress gave us antibiotics and anesthesia. It also quietly picked your pocket of 6 weeks a year. The question is whether anyone's planning to give them back.